Hello, everyone. Very good afternoon to all our listeners. I'm Gunjan Saha, and welcome to the Startup Operators Weekly Roundup. Hi, Roshan. How's the week been for you?
Hey, hi Gunjan. Week has been spectacular, I should say. Very grateful for everything that's happened.
Anything that picked your eye from the startup ecosystem last week?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're going to talk about a bunch of news and events that have happened, right? But I'd like to cover a few updates from the week and things that I thought were super interesting. There was this chart floating around about US and China unicorn births over the last 3 or 4 years, right? And I kind of found that super interesting. So unicorn births in China have receded from their peak of 2018, where they did about 42 unicorn births in that year, to 22, 14, and then 3 over the last few years, right? I mean, they've actually receded. And in that same time period, India has gone up from 8 in 2018 to about 16 already in 2021, right? I mean, China is at 162
Wow.
unicorns and India is closer to 50. So we still have a long way to catch up. But then look at the trend that's happened. And there's been a lot of things that haven't been covered to full extent about China, right? I mean, the way they've handled Alibaba, Jack Ma, and even some of the other larger tech giants, right? Tencent and so on, Tencent, ByteDance, and so on. There's a huge amount of consolidation. There's a little bit of fear and trepidation as well, right? And it's very telling that in the time that China has receded, India has gained. So that was one thing, and the second thing was we covered Bharat Pay acquiring. I think what was that? That loyalty thing, right? I mean, what did they acquire?
Payback India.
Correct. Payback India sometime back. I
Payback
think it was
India.
last week or the week before that. And now there's
Last
news
week,
of
yeah.
Bharat Pay and Centrum going to put in about 300 million in Punjab and Maharashtra Cooperative Bank, right? RBI has cleared the takeover. And that's another amazing development, right? I mean, the whole banking mess is being cleared little by little. And at the same time, startups are acquiring licenses to operate as banks, right? So we had mentioned that time that, Bharat Pay was looking to build a loan book. That was a mission. And this again, they were operating as an NBFC, but this further reduces their cost of funds and everything, right? So again, there'll be more capital for small businesses to access at more competitive rates, I would say. I think they're also looking to raise about 1,800 crores, I think, to plug all the balance sheet inefficiencies. PMC has had quite a mess, in fact, right? And there were allegations of money
Mhm.
laundering, so on and so forth. But good to see that being resolved, and at the same time, Bharat Pay gaining access to, some of this banking infrastructure and licensing, right? So finally, I mean, we've spoken about the FAME subsidy for EVs that the government has been providing, right? And I think one of the major issues has been that electric vehicles, especially two-wheelers, seem to cost a lot more than the normal combustion engine two-wheelers, right? I mean, Ather, for example, I think is 1.5 lakh or something of that sort. So a lot of people don't really do an apples to apples comparison between a two-wheeler, which is electric vehicle, and a normal two-wheeler, right? But the good thing is a number of these electric two-wheelers will be available at the 70 80k kind of price segment, right? Because of these subsidies and so on. So the government has also decided to increase subsidy on electric two-wheelers by 50%, right? So to around 15,000 rupees per kilowatt hour under the FAME subsidy, which is the faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles. So yeah, a bunch of interesting things that have been happening, and good to see that we were right about a few of these.
Right, exactly. So I think as production for EVs increase, right? I mean, it's just in its nascent stages in India, early stages. So once mass adoption starts taking place, the prices will automatically come down.
Yeah.
And regarding the number of fintechs and the sort of fundings that we had covered earlier, this is all ushering age of neo banking in India, something which Hong Kong, Singapore has already started adopting.
Yeah, and see, more interestingly, right, on both those points, see, EV, we covered, I think self propulsion last week, and we said that,
Last round, yeah.
early in the innovation, I mean, you have to develop things full stack, right? Plenty of things have to be developed by the companies that are innovating, right? And any kind of subsidy at that point of time will just help fasten and accelerate that curve of innovation, right? That is one thing. And fintechs, look, I mean, fintechs have operated as a front end layer, right? But with all of this licensing and everything, I mean, I think they will keep adding to those. They'll keep adding that back into it, right? And they'll be able to provide a lot more than what is now being seen.
Right. So, yeah, we have a very similar news piece that we'll be covering in the roundup today, along with, as we mentioned last week, a new unicorn in India. So this week also a brand new unicorn, and very interestingly, ESOP buybacks are back again. So we'll be covering that. So, yeah, let's get started. The first news, I mean, goes without saying, a new week, a new unicorn. And it's interesting to note that the startup which made the unicorn this week did not raise any money for the first 6 weeks of first 6 years of its journey. And despite that fact, they still remain profitable. And that startup is Browserstack. In its latest financing round, this 10-year-old startup has raised $200 million, and it is valued at $4 billion. Now, with a $4 billion valuation, Browserstack becomes India's most valuable SaaS. The round was led by Bond, and Insight Partners and existing investor Axel participated in the round. Now, this is a startup that's built in India, but it has a global clientele. It includes the likes of Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Twitter, IKEA, Spotify, Trivago, and over 50,000 global customers operate on BrowserStack. Now, what BrowserStack essentially does is they provide testing platforms for the browser, like on what different types of browsers on different types of systems, how would the application perform? And I think BrowserStack aims to become the testing infrastructure of the internet, which is a no small feat by any magnitude. And what's also interesting that recently they acquired visual testing and review platform Percy, and I think they'll be acquiring more companies in the times to come. But yeah, Roshan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on BrowserStack becoming India's most valuable SaaS. I
Yeah,
mean, how cool is that?
we covered a bit of this in our earlier segment on developer tools exploding, right? And why India is like, acutely positioned to capture this. Look, I mean, it's super complicated building all of this testing infrastructure, right? Because, the number of devices have increased. You have smartwatches, wearables, IoT devices, etc., right? And your application has to run on all of these 20, 30 devices and on different platforms, browsers and whatnot, right? So testing has become so much more complicated. At the same time, I mean, you have such a pressure to ship regularly and to be, very, very consumer friendly and so on and so forth, right? So browser stack is solving a very, very real need. And look at the clients again, right? Google, Amazon, Microsoft, like the three biggest tech companies in the world, right? And including some of the others in retail, for example, Tesco, IKEA, and all of these. So they're seeing tremendous scale, right? I think the revenue is closer to the 100 million mark, which possibly makes this valuation around 30, 40 times. We discussed SaaS multiples last time, so this is way up there. One of the things that struck me yesterday was, I was reading this David Sachs post on how, as a SaaS business, positioning for teams versus consumers is so much more lucrative, right? And he had done a cohort analysis of Spotify, Netflix, and some of the other B2C SaaS plays, and had seen that retention and monetization for teams is way better. Now, obviously, instinctively, people know that, right? It's a lot more stickier. It's a lot more, integral part of usage and so on and so forth, right? But again, browser stack kind of models will work really, really well, right? And you mentioned 6 years they hadn't raised money, because I think the economics is fundamentally very, very sound, right? So yeah, and the other aspect of this is, Mary Meeker's fund Bond has invested in this. So Mary
Yeah.
Meeker, as everyone knows, I mean, she was part of Kleiner Perkins earlier. She used to put out these fantastic reports on state of the internet, right? And they've raised about $3 billion fund in March itself, and they also back Byju's, right? So yeah, this is fantastic. I mean, given the SaaS IPOs that we saw last year in the US, and the kind of multiples everyone is trading at, I think this is This is a bet on Browserstack becoming the next IPO, basically.
Yeah, and also a good roadmap ahead as well, right? I mean, mobile users, the number of mobile users in the world is just going to increase, right? So yeah, more power to these folks.
Yeah, see, software is going to get a lot more complicated, right? Because a number of, for number of things that we mentioned, so any kind of platform infrastructure play will become like integral. Um, we've spoken about, how it is like, building shovels in a gold rush. This is a typical example of that. Software is exploding, right? And, any kind of infrastructure that makes it easier for people to ship will become a lot more integral. And more importantly, I think developers are taking some of these calls, right? I mean, you have your tech leads and managers, given these kind of budgets to spend maybe $20 POPM or something of that sort, right, per user per month for some of these tools that make it easier for them to ship. So yeah, it's a convergence. It's a variety of factors that is kind of playing this up.
Right. Okay, we spoke about neo banking and browser stack on the mobile testing front. All of these things adds up to acquiring new demographics for market expansion, and that's what exactly Fampay is doing. Fampay is a fintech app that's targeted to teenagers, to put it in a better way, first-time mobile phone users. They already have raked up in 2 million registered users within just 8 months of its launch in 2019. And Fampay has been averaging a month-on-month growth of, I think, 100%. Recently, they raised $38 million in a Series A round that was led by Elevation Capital. And existing backers, Sequoia Capital India, Venture Highway, Y Combinator, Global Founders Capital, and also new investors, General Catalyst, Rocket Ship VC, and Greenox Capital participated in the round. And this is such a young startup, right? I mean, started in 2019. And Zeta, which had recently entered the Unicorn Club after raising a new round from SoftBank, something which we covered last roundup, they have tied up with Fampay to power their neo-banking solution, right? So as we spoke of neo-banking gaining traction in India. But what's interesting is $38 million is a large Series A check. And I think considering the market Fampay is operating in, it's rightly justified, right? What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. See, you know, banking in India is a gold mine for the taking, right? And the truth is, banks have sat on their behinds for so much time, right, and have not really, done any of this stuff which the fintechs are right now looking at, right? Again, this is a business that the bank should have, targeted way back when, right? Because obviously adolescents spend money, right? And obviously there is a huge base of people right now who are digital first, right? So these are services that the bank should have thought of earlier and have done something about it. But as we have seen, fintechs are continuing to be the front end for this, right? So what's interesting is Fampay had also raised about 4.5 million, I think you mentioned earlier, right, in seed
In the
funding
seed
from Y
round, yeah.
Combinator and Sequoia India. So yeah, I mean they've done pretty well, and they've tied up with the IDFC, which is again being very very aggressive on the retail front, right? IDFC was offering something like 7% interest on savings accounts earlier. So I mean, amazing. So they call their mission as providing financial literacy to teenagers. And given the young population that we have the largest young population in the world. This is a massive base, right? Massive base. And I look at it as a net positive, right? I mean, parents and elders basically get visibility into the spending, and children also get an understanding of how money works, right? Basically, otherwise, I mean, it's all uh, I mean, you basically learn about all of these things way later than usual, right? I mean, we don't have the
Right.
traditional set up a lemonade stand kind of a tradition in India, right? So it's fantastic on that front. And I think, yeah, 2 million registered users is no mean feat, right? And in about 2 years of their being in this journey. Yeah, so it's a fantastic new model that's being done, and it'll be interesting to see how this pans out going further.
And also considering that the Indian stock markets are in a massive bull run, touching all-time high, it's great to get the younger population onto the financial markets early.
This is not about that. I mean, this is more on the spending side of things.
I mean, getting into the habit of, saving money, investing. I mean, if I would have had an app like this during my time, probably this is the route I would have taken. But yeah, interesting. Okay, so this is a very interesting AI startup, right? All of these times when we hear about AI, we think of, computers doing work. And here you have a company, VNI Systems, that started by, former CEO of Infosys, Vishal Sikka. Over this startup claims to put the human aspect back into AI platforms. And with this philosophy, they had raised $140 million in a financing round that was led by SoftBank Vision Fund 2. Earlier, they had raised 50 million in its seed financing round. Now, I'll tell you what really piqued my interest. I do not know what does VNI systems do. I did try, digging deep online. I checked out the website, but it was very,
Yeah.
they did not give anything concrete, right? But I got this interesting statement from Dr. Vishal Sikka, the founder. He said that the startup is building a better AI platform, one that puts human judgment at the center of systems that brings vast AI capabilities to amplify human potential. Now, I really couldn't make, I mean, it sounds great, but if I were to pinpoint to precisely one thing that they do, I couldn't. But the company claims that many of the world's largest and the most respected businesses, including insurance and Munich Re, are its customers. Now, although a very little is known about the company, it is backed by really strong investors, like the likes of George Roberts, who's the co-founder of KKR, Jerry Yang, who's the founding partner of AME and co-founder of Yahoo. So, what do you make of this fundraise? Something like a stealth startup with such a large check size.
Uh, they have actually created their own programming language, apparently, right, to enable more and more developers and companies utilize AI and ML techniques. So yeah, I mean, again, this is very platform level, infrastructure level innovation, right? And who better to do it than Dr. Sikka? So he had pushed for a similar AI first approach in Infosys, right? And of course, I mean, he was the first non-founder CEO of Infosys, and obviously lesser said about his stint than required, right? I mean, he didn't have the best stint in Infosys for a variety of reasons. He was also interesting, the first ever CTO of SAP. Now, we've spoken about this at length in the episode that we did with Ashwini Ashokan, right, of Match Street 10, where she spoke about building enterprise startups and how she's excited about a lot of the AI native startups that's going to come out of some of the innovation that's happening at the core level, right? And they've actually released a platform called Blocks, right, which helps
Right.
companies be AI first, on day one itself. So yeah, I mean, similar to what you said, I could not find too much of information on what exactly VNI does, but I think they're analyzing data for large companies and helping them be more intelligent, right? Both on the customer side of things and operations side of things. So yeah, I mean, this is a I'm not surprised by the number of the amount of funding they've raised, or the fact that they have all of these people backing them, obviously, right? Because Dr. Sikka has the credentials, and who better than him to do something like this? So yeah, exciting times for sure.
Right. So one interesting quote which I remember from your conversation from the episode, right, was when she said, "If humans make mistakes, it's acceptable, but when an AI makes mistake, it's not." And VNI system is, playing that smartly by putting the human judgment factor into the AI. So a nifty trick. But yeah, so this week we have ESOPs back again. Sharechat and Pharmeasy announced their ESOP buyback programs. Mohalla Tech, which is the parent company for Sharechat and short video app Moj, has announced that their ESOP buyback program will be worth $19.1 million. With this, close to 200 existing and former employees who have vested options will be eligible to participate as part of this buyback. ShareChat had recently raised $500 million at a valuation of 2.1 billion, which also made it the first social media platform to enter India's growing list of unicorns. And we had covered this in our previous roundup. What's also interesting about the ShareChat buyback is its ESOP exercise prices has been revised from rupees 1,551 to only rupees 1. And interestingly, share prices has increased 88x in the past 5 years. So I think that's amazing to achieve such a milestone. But yeah, Roshan, any thoughts on ShareChat's ESOP buyback?
Man, it's just going to create massive wealth, right? I mean, they've phenomenal, like really, like truly applaud the founders, right? Because again, 19 million is a lot of cash, right? And the fact that they've also reduced it to 1 rupee, right? Which is again fantastic. I mean, it's going to create a lot of wealth, and I'm really excited for all of the people who are going to come out of this and start companies and invest in companies and so on and so forth, right? So that is something that I think Indian ecosystem has been slightly behind compared to the rest of the ecosystem, right? We've not had a lot of M&A and exit activities happening here, right? So just look at what Infosys did for all of us, right? Here at India, here in India, right? I mean, they
Yeah,
created a entire class of people who went on to invest in companies, become
started
founders.
being the
Yeah.
yeah, we became like the software hub of the world, like a
Yeah,
company like
not
Infosys,
just a
TCS.
not just a wide base of talent. I mean, even the second order effects of this, right? I mean, you just have to study what's happened in Bangalore over the last 15-20 years, right? And the role that Infosys and ESOPs have played in this, right? And that's just one company, right? So phenomenal stuff. I'm really looking forward to more such ESOP buybacks and so on and so forth. So the next second order effects of all of this will kick in, and we have a lot more startups, we have a lot more funding as well.
Right. And also, Pharmeasy announced its ESOP buyback program, which is worth $9.1 million. So the co-founder, Dr. Dhaval Shah, announced this third buyback program in the past 12 months via a LinkedIn post. So with this third round, I think the total ESOP buyback has gone up to $11.1 million. And yeah, they are also in advanced talks to acquire diagnostic services chain Thyrocare in a, I think, $1 billion deal. And I think they're also planning to go IPO in this financial year. Anything interesting you have noticed about Pharmeasy's buyback, or we've been covering them a lot in our roundups. So anything
Mm.
interesting that you have noticed?
Nothing in particular. I mean, I think we covered this last time when we spoke about Tata and Reliance and Netmeds and so on and so forth, right? So it's definitely going to be Tata and 1MG, sorry. It's definitely going to be an interesting space for sure, right? This whole online pharmacy, e-pharmacy space, and what's again, just to reiterate what I said. I mean, it's amazing that a lot of wealth is being created as this funding also increases, and it's also a vote of confidence in the core mission of the company, right? So the fact that founders are actually buying back all of these shares and so on. So yeah.
Right. So the next piece of item that we have is Apna, who has raised $70 million in Series B funding round. But some quick trivia to all our listeners: the name Apna was inspired by Ranveer Singh's movie Gully Boy. So there was a song over there called Apna Time Aayega, and that has been the inspiration for the startup's name. So yeah, I mean, great you're choosing a name, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Apna is a professional networking platform for blue and gray collar workers. We have more than 100,000 recruiters, including Byju's and Academy, Flipkart, Bharti AXA, Burger King, Dunzo, use Apna's platform, where they have to spend less than 5 minutes to post job posts and connect to hyperlocal candidates with relevant skills and finish the hiring in just 2 days. Insight Partners and Tiger Global recently co-led the $70 million Series B round and valued this platform at $570 million. In 3 months ago, it had raised 12.5 million as part of its Series A round, and that was led by Sequoia Capital and Green Oaks. And I think currently their operations are based out of India, but in the coming months they're planning to go international as well. So, Roshan, last roundup we started off where you mentioned, Bihar's employment program for returning migrant workers in the lockdown,
Yeah.
and this way we are covering Apna, which is, a platform to provide these migrant workers work opportunities. So, what do you think? I mean, with this whole news?
See, education and employment in India are evergreen, right? Given the massive base that we have. So, Apna focuses specifically on tier two cities, tier two, tier three cities, and villages, right? And they have this app where people can sort of network and apply to all of these jobs. And what they promise is very, very quick employment, right? And on the other side of things, I mean, if you look at it, startups are continuing to recruit people by droves, right? I mean, massive. And given everything that's happened in during COVID, where people have lost jobs, unemployment has increased, and so on. Anything that we can do to bridge that gap is always welcome, right? And look, they're not just focusing on jobs, etc. They're also focusing on skill learning, and peer-to-peer sharing and all of that stuff, right? So which is amazing. And I think what they have, probably 1 crore users at this point of time, which is again very, very significant, right? 15 lakh jobs, or at least that's what they claim. So it's 15 lakh interviews, sorry, not 15 lakh jobs. So
Yeah.
they've also partnered with some of these organizations like Ministry of Minority Affairs in India, National Skill Development Corporation, and some UNICEF programs and so on also, right? So this is fantastic news. I mean, it's really great.
Right. So, coming to our weekly Wembu's wisdom. This week, Sridhar sir, I put up a tweet which reads, "My younger self used to think intellect can solve our problems. But as I get older, I realize that intellect without humility will only lead to destruction. Greater the intellect, faster the destruction. Humility is expressed through bhakti, devotion, surrender to divine." What are the first thoughts that come into your head, Roshan, after with
Basically,
this?
Vinasha Kala Viprita Buddhi, man. That's all. you know so it's just that, look, I mean, when I talk to people, right, especially the younger folks out there, I mean, they're just super intelligent. I always say this, that people are way more intelligent today than they were when I was growing up or whatever, right, when I was 22 23. But I feel like a measure of humility and restraint will always serve you well, because it'll keep that curiosity, it'll keep that learner's mindset in your head, and you'll not start self-aggrandizing and making assumptions about how much you know, when really all you know is that what you've done so far, right? Which is not much, given that have plenty to do. So yeah, you I'm not saying you have to believe in a higher purpose or something. I mean, that's way too philosophical, but you have to recognize the limitations of the intellect, right? Which is like here and now, and what you've seen so far, right? So I guess
Yeah.
that's how I see it.
Oh, that was very nice. All right, so before we wrap this up, let's talk about the episodes we're gonna put out this week. So I think you had a conversation with Abhishek Pudda and Saurabh Arora of Plum Insurance, right? Again, another startup we had covered in the roundup, and also Jas Gulati, who is the founder of New Floats and COVID Citizens. So, what was the conversation like, and can you get some sneak peek into these episodes as well?
Yeah, so the episode with Saurabh and Abhishek was amazing. We spoke about how insurance is being disrupted by tech folks, right? And Abhishek and Saurabh are from a typical product and tech background, right? They worked in companies like Google and so on. And it's amazing how they've been able to look at it from a very first principles perspective, but also the fact that I mean, they have Saurabh mentioned this, right? That we can do anything we want. That mindset is amazing, because I think in a field like insurance, right, where things haven't changed for the last, like, let's say 150 200 years, and suddenly in the last 10 years you're seeing a lot of disruption. There are a bunch of assumptions that people have made for the right or wrong reasons, whatever, right? But it's good to have people like Saurabh and Abhishek question some of these assumptions, so that you're able to further validate or disrupt some of them, right? So Plum is doing a fantastic job at that, right? And they've recently raised Series A from Tiger also. So it was a very, very comprehensive episode on insurtech disruption. I would definitely like for people to check it out. Uh, Jas is a startup veteran, right? I mean, he's been in the ecosystem for quite a long time, and he's one of those people. I feel like he's a Baba type of guy, man. I mean, he's so well rounded, and he's got that. humility, which I mentioned just now, right? I mean, he's seen everything from the ringside view, right? And now Floats started talking about digital adoption and SMB focus way back when, right? I mean, 2011, 12, they started talking
Yeah.
about these things. Today, we are seeing that a lot of startups are pressing forth. At that point of time, it was totally nuts, right? To be able to talk to some of these folks and say that, hey, why don't you get online and do this and do that? So it wasn't so trivial, and he has seen that entire curve, right, from then to now. So it was interesting, and he's also done some fantastic work with COVID citizens over the last couple of 2-3 months, right? During the second wave, especially, and he's bandied together a group of founders to really help people out with information, resources, and so on. So it was an absolute pleasure to talk to Jazz as well. So couple of really, really good episodes coming up.
Super. Thanks for that, Roshan. And I think with that, we come to the end of this week's roundup. A huge shout out to all our listeners and subscribers for pushing us all this while. Recently, we put out a 100th episode, and that this would definitely would not have been possible without your love and support. Roshan, any thoughts, any words from your side?
When we started off in April last year, to be really honest, I would have been really happy if we put out 10. And to see that, we've done 100 episodes with all of these fantastic guests has been such a privilege and honor. And thank you, everyone, for making this happen. Really thankful for all of the love and support. Every week I hear from people who say that, the content was interesting, or, that they applied something that they heard in their startup and it made a difference. And these are things that that keeps our motivation and inspiration up, right? Because obviously it takes a lot of effort to publish 2 episodes and then one roundup every week, and we're also thinking of more initiatives as well. So really, thank you so much for all of the love, and we hope to do better in the time to come, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely right. And yeah, I mean, folks are reachable at Operator Startup in Twitter and also on LinkedIn, the Startup Operator. Do check out the podcast and our episodes on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any other podcast platform where you receive your daily shows. With that, yeah, I think we'll see you again next week with some more interesting news and hopefully another unicorn. So take care and have a great week, everyone.
Right. Bye, everyone. Take care.